Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is David Wickstrom, and I'll be your host today for our Ask an Expert webinar. Today's session is based on one of our popular recent blog posts where we tackled the simple question: how often should cafes and restaurants replace their water filters? We will hear today that it isn't just about taste, it's about protecting the equipment, reducing downtime, and avoiding costly surprises during peak business periods. We're joined today by a couple experts, and I'm going to bring them onto the stage. We actually have three experts here today. We have our two good friends, experts from Holiday House Distributing, Anthony Tartamella and Richie Russell, who work hands-on with operators across different regions across the U.S., helping them align filtration strategies with local water conditions and equipment needs. And from Vivreau, we're joined by Ryan Wolfrum, our in-house water filtration expert, who brings a manufacturer's perspective on preventative maintenance and long-term system performance. Guys, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
You bet. So before we get started, I'm going to set expectations. We're going to follow the themes we had in the blog, but this is absolutely a live conversation. So we encourage people that are listening, if you have questions, ask questions. I'm probably going to have questions, so I'm going to ask of Richie, Ryan, and Anthony along the way. So if we get into something we know could help you, the client, the operator, the partner, we're going to ask that. And as I mentioned, absolutely feel free to raise your hand if you have questions for those listening out there. So I want to start, guys, with the big picture. And Richie, this question is for you. In the recent blog, you mentioned that changing filters before a busy season is critical. Can you expand on why timing matters so much for operators?
Yeah, of course I can. So, changing it before a busy season is the most important time. Just frankly speaking, you don't want to go in there while an office or a cafe is jam-packed with people and then say, hey, for 30 minutes, we have to turn off the machines. Let's cut the water so we can change all the water filters. You never want to do that. You're losing money. You're losing business. Customers are unsatisfied. So the best thing I can recommend is, everyone knows those kind of 2 weeks of like Christmas and New Year's. Try and find an off time or a time where you're closed, where you can go in, change out the filters, have it on a nice set schedule so you can change it, beginning of the year, then every 6 months, change it after that.
So Richie's scheduling is paramount. That's important to really have a set schedule, knowing, meaning like your staff will know that, to your point, December 19th, Holiday House is going to be out there and they're going to be working with us.
Right. Yeah. And we recommend to all our customers that are installing filters, to go out on a set schedule, like you said, and, change a filter and just know that it's always up and ready and you never have to worry about the filter being clogged or having to be changed. It's on a set schedule. You're always going to have clean water going to your machines. You don't have to worry about it.
So, you're leading me into a question here. What problems tend to show up when operators, they wait too long? They're not on that schedule. What do you see? What occurs?
Right. The biggest thing is every filter has a certain lifespan, a certain amount of gallons that, it can hold until the filter starts to lose effectiveness. And that's when the filter can clog. You won't get the water in your machine. It won't filter properly. So now you're getting scale and other debris, tastes, odors that are going into your water, into the machine, not only ruining the machine, but also affecting your coffee at the end of the day.
And I am no barista, but isn't coffee like 98% water anyway?
Right. Yeah.
99%?
It all starts with the water. And then after that, it depends on what coffee you use. But the water is the most important part.
Absolutely. Thank you, Richie. Ryan, this one is for you. From a preventative maintenance standpoint, what actually happens inside the equipment when filters aren't changed?
It's a great question.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
You can even expand regionally too. We know water is different where you live in the country, but you could talk to that as well.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So when a filter isn't changed, it is very regional. It's one of the reasons why it's so important to understand how the water is made up in your area so that you can treat the water properly. In places like the Southwest where they have high hardness, when that filter gets exhausted, you're very likely to see mineral buildup, scale buildup occur. When that occurs, we'll see a loss of effectiveness of the equipment. That heating element will be insulated with all that scale buildup and will work less effectively. Your power bill will get higher and your machine won't keep up. In other portions of the country where they don't have hard water, but they do use a lot of chlorine, when that filter gets exhausted, you'll find that your coffee gets an off taste. And up near Anthony and I, up in the Northeast here, some of the old infrastructure, we have a lot of debris in the water. A lot of turbidity is what it's called. And that turbidity just clogs filters, something fierce. So changing those filters regularly, in a manner before they're completely clogged means that they're going to, function as they should, and keeping that equipment functioning as it should.
And it's safe to assume if you're a national coffee company or espresso company, you want the same pour to taste as it does in Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon. You don't want, and that can affect the pour, the drop, the taste, and then ultimately that's touching the customer and the customer is unhappy. And
that's what we want to avoid.
Yeah. And really hearing that it starts at filtration, that with good filtration, you can only have success moving forward.
That's just it. Coffee is such a part of our routine every morning. Whether we like to admit it or not, we all really depend upon it. And to have our routine disrupted because the maintenance hasn't been performed and that equipment is suffering, or worst case, it's gone down, it's out of order, and there's no coffee, leads to some pretty unhappy folks. So we try what we can do to avoid that.
We don't want unhappy folks. No,
we do not.
So, Anthony, this question's for you. So one of the most common misconception is you should wait for something to feel wrong before changing a filter. So you should, you change a filter when it starts to go sideways. You had shared in the blog that reduced water pressure is often the first noticeable sign, but not the most reliable one. Can you walk us through what operators should really be paying attention to as it relates to that?
Definitely, like Rich,
we're losing you a little bit, Anthony.
You're not.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
There you go.
Anthony, I know what you're saying is really important. I can see it, but we can't hear you.
Why? I'm on.
Try holding it up.
We're having technical difficulties here.
We hear you.
You go.
You hear me now?
Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, there you go. Then I'll hold this up here. How's that sound?
Perfect.
Like I was saying, the 6-month rule is not a steadfast rule. You should really keep an eye on it, because the way a filter gets clogged basically is it clogs slowly. So what'll happen is it'll start clogging slowly with the sediment, and while it's still water's coming through, your material is exhausted already. So when your material is exhausted, your phosphate is gone, most of that stuff is gone, and you're basically just passing water through a cartridge now. There's nothing being filtered anymore. So that's why the last sign will be clogging unless you have a lot of sediment in your water. And then what we always suggest is to have a pre-sediment filter before your filter to protect your material that's in your filter. So that's basically where I'm thinking with that.
So Anthony, should all systems have a pre-filter, or is it that go back to what Ryan did mention around regionally, depending on?
Absolutely. We have it is regionally, and that's why it's important to test your water and see exactly what's going on. In our neck of the woods here in Jersey, we have high iron content also, so you would have to also adjust for the iron content. A lot of times, if I'm correct, most of the iron filters, iron reducing filters, are sub-micron, so you can't have anything
That's right.
too high of a micron, which then causes quicker problems for clogging, because now it's catching more of that sediment and it's clogging the filter faster. So
Yep.
when you have a low sub-micron filter, it's always good, I think, to have a pre-filter on there to protect that filter.
This is as much science as it is somebody enjoying a cup of coffee or a glass of water. This is like absolutely insane. I imagine not upstate New York versus the city like would differ in
Absolutely.
regionals. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, like we said also in the blog, in some of the places in Manhattan, they still have the water tanks up on the top of their buildings. That creates a lot of sediment. So it is a science. A good cup of coffee is a very scientific way of doing things. So if you want to make it right.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
love
and
that. I'm learning this. Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
I was just going to say, to expand upon what Anthony's saying, when rather than waiting for a filter to clog, running until the very bitter end, if you take the time to schedule your maintenance proactively, you can schedule it when it works best for you. If anybody's luck is worse than mine, I'd be surprised. But for me, it's always, that filter's clogged at the worst possible time, right before a big
Right.
meeting on Tuesday or Saturday morning. And, being proactive about it allows you to fit that service in when there's some downtime and when there's some space to work, so that the impact on the end user is as minimal as possible.
Absolutely.
So this is a question I'm going to ask is all three of you, and you can raise your hand. So, and this may be in Ryan, this may be in your backyard. Can you talk to me about filtration degradation versus flow? Like, what's the differentiating point between the two?
Yeah, for sure. Flow rate can degrade, like Anthony was saying, especially when we have a lot of sediment in the water. Dependent upon where you are in the country, that sediment can increase seasonally. Again, like Anthony was saying. So, sort of the bad timing would be if you installed a new filter right before the tanks in the city were flushed on some of those buildings. You very, very well may end up clogging your filter with all that sediment that's brand new, that technically still has plenty of filtering capacity left, if only the water could make it through that sediment that's on the outside clogging your filter. The flip side is, the opposite. If you're somewhere where the sediment and the turbidity is very, very low, you're more likely to be able to use the entirety of the media in the cartridge to filter your water and to make it clean, and not see any reduction in the overall flow rate. In those cases, it's not uncommon, for folks to completely forget about their water filter and let it go for a year or 2 or 3 or more. They're fortunate to not have the turbidity and that sediment, but it's pretty easy to forget about that filter until suddenly the coffee doesn't taste right, and suddenly your shots aren't extracting properly, and you just sort of left scratching your head about what's the cause of this, and ultimately it's just that the media inside the filter cartridge has been exhausted.
And the operator could be scratching their head going, why isn't anyone coming in for coffee? I have the best coffee in the planet, and it's they hadn't taken care of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely
Richie,
correct.
Anthony, anything to add on that? Any thoughts around that?
I think the only thing I can add is the most important thing is to have your water tested. So you're placing the proper filter for whatever your needs. And that goes for the flow rate, for what you need filtered out, as well as the gallon lifespan, because if you're going through 5,000 gallons of water every, it's a high number, but let's say 3 months, and you put a 1,500 gallon lifespan filter on there, it's going to be changed very soon. You're going to see the issues come a lot earlier. That's why it's very important to install the proper filter for your needs.
Yeah.
One thing I can add also is on the traditional equipment, a lot of the times you'll get service calls where you're half potting or 3/4 potting, or you're just not getting the flow that you were getting. it's usually not the machine. It's usually your filter or something clogging a solenoid or actually adhering to the heating. It takes a longer recovery time also. So there are little things that you can check and see if it could be your filtration on that. It's not just the equipment.
So, and
Yeah.
so for Richie, so then would you say that customers or operators may underestimate, let's say, scale buildup? They're like, oh, our pots have these, it looks like snowflakes on our, it's fine, everything's okay. Like, do you think they may underestimate that from time to time?
They do. We have a lot of scale issues down here in Florida, and some customers don't get a filter that's built to take out scale, and then their brew baskets getting all the white residue just kind of built up. They're seeing it on their machines, in the tanks. The scale is a big issue, especially in certain machines, and it can completely break down a machine if it's not taken care of to where the machine just won't run. Scale is a major issue that you need to watch out for. And again, like I said before, the biggest thing is to have your water tested, know what you need to take out to have your machines run properly, and to get a good cup of coffee or even just water at the end of the day. You want to provide a quality service and give a great tasting coffee.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. One of my talking points is always, generally what comes with water filter exchanges are someone to come out and do it. And oftentimes you have to pay for that person to come and do the exchange. And so if you test your water and you know approximately how much water you're going through, like Richie was saying, if you can time the size of the filter to when you have a regular visit from someone coming in, it'll help, control costs for you as well, to make sure that, that expense of operating the equipment is as minimal as possible.
Right.
So it's almost, if you're a food service operation, if you need your ducts clean, you get those clean, you get your filters flushed, you
That's
do
it.
it all. You do it on a Sunday or a Monday, which a lot of restaurants are, if we're talking in that space, they may be closed. That's when you get it done.
Right.
Yeah,
Preventative
absolutely.
maintenance is always better than reactive maintenance, where you have to turn off a machine and not produce your service to people just because you have to fix something or replace something.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
imagine a customer doesn't want to see, hold on one moment, I'm as they're waiting for their latte. Just hold on, like that doesn't fly.
Now,
Right. Or like the big thing in offices where they tape a piece of paper on the front of the machine that says out of order, and no one can get their coffee for the day. And of course, you're going to have a lot of disgruntled employees or customers that day.
Yep. You made the whole ride into the office. All you're doing is waiting for that, first cup of coffee to sit at your desk with. You show up and that paper's on the machine. Just breaks your heart. It's just
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It's a bad way to start the day.
it is.
Well, and I, to take that one step further, if companies are interested in keeping culture good in their office or engagement with their employees, coffee and water is a great way to start. That's where employees feel, seen or thought of or taken care of. So it sounds like that's a simple way to increase engagement, really. That's the way I'm hearing it from you guys.
Absolutely.
It is, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things to say is nobody will ever turn down a cup of coffee because it's too good. So,
Right.
You're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right about that. In an old life, when I was a serviceman out there were a couple of times you'd walk into an office when the machine was down for whatever reason, filtration, whatever reason. You walk in. I've gotten a couple of standing ovations walking in after that machine gets fixed. So it's definitely very important to keep them running.
That's a real life, experience where it's
absolutely.
that important. Yeah. You can cut people's hours, adjust their pay plan, but don't mess with my coffee.
Don't mess with the coffee. Absolutely.
No, yeah.
Well, we had a question come in. I'm just going to read it. So everyone, as we're watching this, I'm doing multitasking, so I'm reading questions. So the question is, and this is for all three of you, so feel free to jump in. When does it make sense for an operator to move from a multiple small filters to a single high capacity flow solution? Or is that something somebody should ever consider?
So I'll just start. I think it's always a good solution if it's cost effective and it also manages your service guy's time. going in, shutting off the water, replacing one filter after flushing it is a lot faster than doing 3 or 4 stage filter systems. And on top of that, some high capacity filters are just perfect for situations. If they're going through a lot of water, and they're going through 10,000 gallons every 6 months, you want to install the right filter. You can put a high capacity filter that handles the 10,000 with ease, and you don't have to worry about it. In a 4-stage filter, your first filter could get clogged, and then it starts affecting the post filters. And it's a lot more to watch out for and keep on top of, rather than just getting one high capacity filter if you are using that much water.
I definitely agree with Richie there. We distribute to the service providers for the cafes and all that, so they want to get in and out as quick as they possibly can. They are not going to test each individual filter. That's why when we do the 1-stage filter, the only thing we would recommend before it is basically a sediment filter to protect your more expensive filter. So that's the easiest, simplest way of getting the best filtration that you can.
Right. And there's even, high capacity filters, with a good gallon per minute rate that can handle multiple machines just going through one filter. So it's also saving you on install time, just installing one high capacity filter rather than running 3 separate lines from water, going to their separate filters to the separate machines.
Absolutely.
I don't think I have anything more to add. I think you guys nailed it.
No, I feel like
the next one for you.
Right. I feel like I'm back at school. I'm like, this is like a TED talk on filtration. This is fantastic. Just to go off script a little bit, is there, and we're not picking on anybody regionally, but like interested from your vantage point, are there parts of the country where you're like, okay, generally their water's, I don't want to say better, but it's, I guess probably needs less filtration. And then getting back to the regional part, are there other places where, gosh, we're going to need 5 pre-filters, another 10 filters, etc. Like, let's start with where's like really ideal water locations. I'd be interested.
Well, in my neck of the woods, yeah, New York usually has very good water, but that could change from literally block to block. Again, when you go into Manhattan and they have those tanks up on, some of them don't clean the tanks as often as they could. I've actually seen filters explode with all the sediment that comes down once they do a cleaning up there. So it really varies from place to place, but Manhattan is known for having decent water. There are a lot of companies that don't even put a filter on their machine, and they'll pay for it later on because something always comes through the pipes. So you need something on there, but. You go from New York to upstate New York where there's well water. Now you have a totally different animal up there, and you need, 5 stages of filters. You need sometimes up there to get that done. So there is a big difference. That's why testing is so important.
The Pacific Northwest is known to have good water. I think San Francisco would probably argue with Anthony a little bit that they have the best water, but a little East Coast West Coast rivalry never really hurt. So yeah. And then tough water wise, water hardness, like Richie said, it's so challenging and so difficult. It'll just run away from you. When you start getting buildup in there, it creates havoc. Down in Richie's neck of the woods, again, the Southwest, Arizona, Southern California, they get some pretty hard water down there too. Up around the Great Lakes is pretty tough. And then unfortunately for me up here in the Boston area, we have a lot of salt in the water from, salt in the roads in the wintertime. And it will just eat through equipment in less than a year. It's really, really aggressive water. So it's important to understand that and manage that, because if you're investing in equipment, whether it's for your own cafe or for equipment on loan, you will very quickly lose that investment if the water is not managed properly.
So you brought to mind 2 things. There's a reason I always tease my New Yorkers. The reason New York has the second best pizza in the country, which I know is fighting words for New Yorkers.
Yeah, I'll be nice about that.
You have the best pizza, and I believe this to be true. A huge reason for that is, to your point, Anthony, the water is so good that
absolutely. Don't forget
It
the
makes
bagels. Bagels also.
the bagels as well. Like you have a good pie and a good schmear, and you have a
Good.
happy customer.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's all you need is the coffee with that, and you're good. Good schmear
That's
and good
right.
coffee.
That's right. Well, Ryan also just brought up something that I hadn't even thought about. If you get a lot of snow, salt from the trucks, and however your community is servicing the snow, that I'm hearing that can affect ultimately the water source or the water. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, it's a huge problem nowadays. Across the snow belt, across all of North America, salt is a very convenient solution for reducing the amount of salt and ice on the roads. And oftentimes, that salt, as the snow does melt, makes its way into the bodies of water, especially the surface water. And just like the damage that salt does to cars and all kinds of equipment out there working, it does the same to your equipment in your cafe, in your office, in your home. That water, the salinity of the water increases. And especially at heat in coffee equipment, it becomes very aggressive very quickly. We see a little bit of problem with it in areas where they desalinate ocean water. Again, Southern California, some down near Ritchie. Salt on the roads and desalination aren't the only sources of chlorides in the water, which is the fancy science word for salt in the water. But it will come from agricultural runoff as well. But primarily where we see it is in the snow belt.
Mm-hmm.
So really anywhere you're getting water, so it's surface water, well water, from the ground, from the sky, it's not going to be a straight line, I guess, to
No.
your.
Wow. No,
Wow.
it's tough. It's very tough. And, we've seen, unfortunately, people become very disappointed here in New England, especially in Massachusetts. They'll put in a new coffee maker or a new espresso machine, and in 9 months, they'll have a hole in the machine and they'll need to replace it. And it just, it's heartbreaking to watch it happen, especially knowing that it's preventable. So, just test your water, test.
Absolutely.
It's always easier, like I've always said, to just buy the right water filter and have your machine run great than be bashing your head trying to figure out what's wrong with your machine and replacing part after part after part from having just unfiltered water or improper filtered water going through the machine.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
So this question is for all three of you. If I'm an operator or a coffee shop and I have this dream of opening it, does Holiday House or Vivreau, do you offer consultation or water testing? I don't know. Like, does that work like in your day to day, and that's really for all three of you.
I'll go first on this one if you guys don't mind.
Yeah.
So we do. Vivreau primarily works with distributors like Holiday House across the country, and we do have a couple of different water tests available that can be used, by an end user. The most common one we have is a little Mylar pouch, with an instruction sheet inside of it and some dip strips. Takes a little bit of time. First time is of course a little harder than the second time you do it. But it's something small that can be mailed to you for a pretty minimal cost. And that time investment and that small monetary investment in testing your water, like Richie was saying, it'll save you many times over if you can make sure that your water's been treated properly.
You're behind me.
Right. It's very easy. Of course there's hurdles when you're first learning to do anything, but trying to test your water and trying to really dial it in correctly and test it. No matter what source you use, I know Vivreau has a couple sources. I know, we offer a few water tests. However you can test your water just to help better, lead you towards the right filter is going to save you so much in the long run, even if it's a headache trying to figure out and match up all the colors on the color strip, or even just as simple as taking a TDS meter and then testing at least just the hardness of the water. Really breaking down to what you need to get out of your water is the most important thing, like we've talked about.
Devin, I also really like to encourage people to try and find someone local. Generally speaking, local water professionals, they know the water in their area better than the three of us ever could. So if you can find, a local water representative to come, even before they test your water, they'll have a pretty good idea of what to expect. And and they'll of course have the in the field experience, how best to treat it and make sure that your equipment stays working as it was designed to.
Yeah, that's perfect.
If I'm an operator, I'd rather go to the three of you, or to your point, Ryan, a local water professional. If I want to know about water, I'm versus going online and getting my own information. I'd rather work with people that really work in this world every single day and have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure all three of us have the horror stories that we've all seen, gone through, that we can definitely attest to, when it comes to making sure you test your water and what water can do to your machines or even your bodies.
Yeah.
Well, Richie, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you share one horror story without getting, too graphic, but maybe a horror story off the top of your head? I'm totally putting you on the spot. I know.
There's a business in Florida. Obviously, there's no names, but they had taken over an account where there was no water filter on a piece of equipment. So as they were taking that machine out, you actually saw it was about 4 inches of just caked up scale, just gross, white, flaky, just built up in all parts of the machine. It was growing. It was because it can get wherever the water touches. So the entire brew chamber was just coated in just this white flake crust that just the water got to, and the scale just builds up over time if it's unchecked and uncleaned, and it just has to be thrown out. You can try and descale it, but at that point, if it goes unnoticed for that long, it gets really gross.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, you got to chisel that out sometimes. That's how bad it gets. Yeah. There was a machine in Anaheim, actually, that we opened up the tank, and it was like walking into a crystal cave. It was just, the whole tank was covered in crystals. It was probably the worst I've ever seen in all the years that I've been out there. So that had to be a very, very high phosphate filter going in there to soften that water up. Yeah.
There's some bad ones out there.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, I think my favorite, a number of years ago, I was working in the field in the Bay Area, and there was an algae bloom in the water reservoir that served San Francisco. And of course, the water was coming out of everybody's faucet brown. And the filters were taking such a beating. It was like once a week we were going to exchange filters. It was crazy. And of course, customers were getting frustrated, right? Like, you were just here, you just did it. And what we figured out to help turn the conversation around was to remove the filter and run some water through the housing and through the head, and then hold that, clear glass of brown water up and say, well, we could skip the filter and you could just have this feeding the machine. And, kind of.
They always change their mind after you show them what it looks like unfiltered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like a scene from Erin Brockovich where she, pours the water and it's all brown. Like, hey, buddy, do you want to drink this? It's like, no.
Yep.
No.
Exactly.
Spot on.
And guys, I thought this was important. We absolutely don't want to scare people, but you guys have seen the worst. And the fact of the matter, what I'm hearing from you guys is sometimes you may have to discard a $10,000 espresso machine because of the scale and the buildup, versus I'm hearing if you do the PM, that's going to save on the life and the taste and experience, everything beyond that.
Yeah, it will always be cheaper. Sorry. But it will always be cheaper to do preventive maintenance, stay on top of everything, keep everything clean. And you can also just do it on your own time. You're not getting calls that the coffee machine is down. You're preventively taking care of it, making sure everything's clean and running correctly, and you never have to worry about it.
Yeah, we have a notorious case in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where somebody paid about $20,000 for their espresso machine. They opened their cafe. They were so excited. And 9 months later, they had a hole in the coffee boiler, just constant stream of water, flooding the cafe. And it was just heartbreaking, because in that case, because they didn't test their water and know how bad the water was there, the manufacturer didn't warrant, because it wasn't a manufacturer defect. It was equivalent to running your car out of oil. And, just the heartbreak of thousands and thousands of dollars for, another $5,000 for repair, just breaks your heart. Somebody worked really hard to get that place open, and because they overlooked the water, they just, they suffered. It's really too bad.
Yeah, it's always a shame to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is there an ideal pH you want when it comes to, and I'll start with you, Ryan. Is a pH for let's talk about coffee. Where should it land? And then I have a food service question after that, but I'll give you the floor.
Right about 7 is ideal.
Okay.
Generally, 7 is neutral. So it would be best. It wouldn't be acidic or basic. Generally, most manufacturers will give you a half a point either side. So 6.5 to 7.5 is generally deemed as passable.
Okay.
Okay.
And Richie, Anthony, your experience too from that pH level too as well.
That is Ryan's expertise for me.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't get too much into the pH levels. All I know is when it comes to water, the one thing I will touch on, it's kind of relevant, but it leads to just like having some minerals in the water. Because like some people like reverse osmosis systems where it takes everything out of the water, super soft water. But the problem with that is actually if you're doing drip coffee, you need some minerals in the water, and it needs to have some hardness to actually be able to absorb some of the coffee going through the water. Because if it's too soft and there's no minerals in the water, once it touches through the coffee grounds, it's actually just running straight through, and you're just going to have a very light brown cup of water sitting in your cup.
So
Absolutely.
you don't want that. So Richie, and this could be Anthony too. So really, it's chemistry at that point. I'm hearing like you need the minerals so the coffee can bond to said minerals, right? Am I understanding that right?
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's got the minerals need to adhere to that coffee, so this way it can extract from the coffee and get it out into your cup. Without it, you're not going to. And what other people don't understand also is some of the newer equipment, they don't have floats anymore. They actually have meters that test that can check how much water's in the tank. And when there's no minerals in there, it will not conduct any electricity. So now your tank's going to overflow. It's not going to work correctly. You need some of that mineral in there. That's why, like Ryan said, they suggest the 6.5 between 7.5 pH because they need to have something in there to go. If you have too much, it's gonna create a bitter taste. Am I right, Ryan, with that?
Yep.
And if it's not enough, it can actually not working. The water won't work in the machine. So you there is chemistry there. Yes, absolutely there is. And most people will just say, put a filter on there. It works. We're good. No problem. We just had our show in Tampa, and I actually sat in on Ryan's class, and I couldn't believe how simple it was to test the water with the tester that they give out. So it's very simple to test. It's really easy to do, and it creates a lot less problems going along the way. I always tell everybody, again, we sell to the distributors. So if you put a filter on your machine, if it saves you 1 to 2 service calls a year, you've paid for that filter 5 times over already.
Absolutely.
So there you go with that.
Oh, this is a good question. For I think all of you, but Ryan, this may be in your wheelhouse. Does cold brew coffee need to be filtered?
Yeah, it sure does. The water for cold brew, very similarly to hot brew. We want to make sure that the water being used doesn't have its own taste. Not be particularly recommended or encouraged to use water with a high chlorine content to brew your cold brew. So you got a nice nose of chlorine as you went to sip your cold brew in the morning. It would. A little bit of Clorox in my cup here. This is nice. Yeah. So yeah, and that's it's a great question, Davin, because it's often overlooked. When cold brew is introduced into a cafe or into a business, it's often an afterthought. And with some of those large bucket brewing systems, people often just go to the kitchen sink and fill that up, and that water isn't often filtered. And so, it's something to certainly be considerate of and, cognizant of as you're developing your cold brew program.
When you're working with hot coffee, you have 3 to 4 minutes of contact time with your hot water and your coffee.
Yep.
If you have any taste, odor, and chlorine in there, it'll come through, but it's 3 minutes. It's not as noticeable as when you're steeping your coffee for 20 hours with your cold brew. You have that bad taste in there of the water. It will come through on the cold brew, and that's my opinion. So definitely.
No.
Right. And the simplest fact is to add to what Ryan said earlier when he was showing a customer their coffee, their water straight from the source, and it was a little brown. You would never want to use that water to try and make your cold brew in a bucket. You definitely want to have the right water to make any kind of coffee, whether it's cold brew or hot brew, just because it's going to affect the taste and every part of it once you drink it and it's finally steeped.
Again, this is a TED Talk, fellas. I'm learning so much. I'm going to pivot a little bit, and I'm going to get to the other question we had. As it relates to food service equipment, in my world, I see combi ovens or any type of food service equipment that has steam. Is there a difference between a combi oven and an espresso machine? Their needs of filtration?
Their needs of filtration are just as important.
Okay.
The combi ovens and the steam, they'll face the same type of issues with scale buildup. Oftentimes, the steam is injected into those ovens through small ports and small jets, and as those get clogged, restricted or completely clogged, the steam production will be slower than it should be, and of course, your food quality will suffer. The other thing, I hope you're ready. A little more TED Talk for you.
All right.
So there is a chemical that's used for water, for municipal water programs nowadays called chloramine. It's like chlorine, but it lasts longer in the water. The problem with chloramine is that it attacks rubber seals. So whether it's a tank gasket in a traditional machine or a group gasket in an espresso machine, or for you, Devin, the door seal, is a big spot where we see, as that chloramine gets into the machine and is turned to steam, it goes in, it degrades the seal of that door, and doesn't allow the steam to maintain the prescribed level in the oven during the cooking process. So it kind of creates massive havoc. So it's really good to use some filtration on your combi.
I feel smarter already on that.
Me too.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the end, guys. And actually, I saw another question come in. Can scale? I'm just reading it off the screen. Can scale build up be on fountain equipment? Hopefully I'm reading that right. I think we might have answered that. Yeah. So even like a student K through 12, they could build up there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it's one of those, like Richie was talking about, and Anthony too, opening up the machines and seeing all that build up in there and just like kind of giving a little bit of this. On a fountain machine, if you've ever, walked through, a school or some other sort of, large facility, a healthcare facility or an airport, and, there's that white crusty stuff on the fountain. It doesn't really compel you to go ahead and, fill your bottle or, bend down and, get some refreshment. So
right. It is not appetizing to look at whatsoever in any capacity.
No.
You're absolutely right.
Just being in the food service world, Brian, you brought up healthcare. I know from healthcare food service, they're not only judged on their patient experience, their patient care rather, but their patient experience. So I'm hearing water filtration, healthy filters for equipment can actually help hospitals and clinics with experience the client's experience.
Yeah. Whether it's, on just a visual level of, removing, mineral buildup on the fountains, so that, folks are more inclined to hydrate, while they're in a facility, or, there are filters that filter down to such a level, they'll remove cysts and bacteria from the water, Davin. So, if the facility is served by a well and that well happens to have a little something in there, that filtration will help, keep those at-risk patients healthy and allow them to get even more healthy and go home. So,
Yep.
All right, we're getting close to winding up, guys. And Anthony. I'm not gonna pick on you, but questions for you, and I know you can answer it. If you had to give an operator one rule of thumb, regardless of their location, like what would it be?
I would say the one thing I would definitely say is taking water filtration as an making it an afterthought, and not thinking about it the same way you would think about what piece of equipment you're putting in there or what kind of coffee that you're using. That's something definitely that I would say that's the one big mistake that they make. When it gets to my operators that we sell that distribute the filters, I would think their biggest mistake is not thinking they can make their filters a saleable item. They feel like they have to be giving them away, and they really don't. That's something that you should sell, just like you sell your cups and your lids and your coffee. So those are the two big takeaways I would take from the biggest mistakes they make out there, I think.
That's great. Richie, how about you?
Yeah, my biggest thing is obviously water filtration. I always recommend to test the water, and at the end of the day, you can provide the best service for your customers. Buy the best coffee to put in your machines, but if you're not putting quality water into your coffee or even your water dispensers, everything is pretty much going to fall apart. It all starts with water. It starts from the source going into your machines, and nothing will be right if you start with bad water. And that's my biggest takeaway with everything is always to start with your water, because water starts everything you're doing, whether it's tea, coffee, just a water dispenser. No matter what you're doing, it all depends on the quality of the water.
Fantastic. Ryan, how about you?
I am going to say similar to what the gentleman said, but I'm going to say there's no one size fits all solution. A small filter may be fine for a small office with a half dozen people in it, but if you have an office with 300 or 3,000 people in there, it's just not going to cut it. So understanding, what your water chemistry is and what your needs actually are, and applying that to, your choice of filter really is going to lead you toward the most successful application of a filter.
100%.
Gentlemen, I feel smarter today, by the way. So thank you. I meant to the three of you. Like, this has been, I know it's been tongue in cheek, but this absolutely has been a TED Talk. So multiple things came through today. The number one thing I'm hearing is get right with your filtration early and often. Find a professional, partner with a professional that can walk you through that. Have your dream as a coffee shop or a restaurant, but find the right people that can support that.
Absolutely.
That's it.
I'm also hearing PMs are really important too. Keep the water going. Yeah.
There.
Yep.
So everyone else that is watching or listening, if you haven't already, I do encourage you to read the Ask the Expert blog that we had with Anthony and Richie and Ryan. They go into even greater detail, and I believe that could absolutely help your operation. So, gentlemen, Richie, Anthony, Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your education and your willingness to lean in and really make us all a little bit smarter today.
Of course, anytime. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. Yes.
You
Been
bet.
a pleasure. Thanks.
All right, fellas. Have a great day.
Take care now.
Thanks. You as well. Have a good one, guys.